Learning objectives. In this chapter, the user would be learning about file and database applications and the following in detail: file access, dialog boxes, error handling, menus, connecting to databases.
File access. File. A file is a collection of data stored in a disk with a specific name and a directory path. When a file is opened for reading or writing, it becomes a stream. File is used to store data, and using that we can operate the data. The operations are reading, writing, close, etc.
Stream. The stream is basically the sequence of bytes passing through the communication path. There are two main streams: input stream, output stream. Input stream. The input stream is used for reading data from file, read operation. Output stream. The output stream is used for writing into the file, write operation. VB.NET I/O classes. The System.io namespace has various classes that are used for performing various operations with files, like creating and deleting files, reading from or writing to a file, closing a file, etc. Some commonly used non-abstract classes in the System.io namespace are: binary reader, reads primitive data from a binary stream. Binary writer, writes primitive data in binary format. Buffered stream, a temporary storage for a stream of bytes. Directory helps in manipulating a directory structure. Directory info, used for performing operations on directories. Drive info, provides information for the drives. File helps in manipulating files. File info, used for performing operations on files. File stream, used to read from and write to any location in a file. Memory stream, used for random access of streamed data stored in memory. Path performs operations on path information. Streamreader, used for reading characters from a byte stream. Streamwriter is used for writing characters to a stream. String reader is used for reading from a string buffer. String writer is used for writing into a string buffer. The file stream class. The file stream class in the System.io namespace helps in reading from, writing to, and closing files. This class derives from the abstract class stream. You need to create a file stream object to create a new file or open an existing file. The syntax for creating a file stream object is as follows. For example, for creating a file stream object F for reading a file named sample.txt. The following program demonstrates use of the file stream class. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. The file mode enumerator defines various methods for opening files. The members of the file mode enumerator are: append. It opens an existing file and puts cursor at the end of the file, or creates the file if the file does not exist. Create. It creates a new file. Create new. It specifies to the operating system that it should create a new file. Open. It opens an existing file. Open or create. It specifies to the operating system that it should open a file if it exists, or otherwise it should create a new file. Truncate. It opens an existing file and truncates its size to 0 bytes. File share. File share enumerators have the following members. Inheritable. It allows a file handle to pass inheritance to the child processes. None. It declines sharing of the current file. Read. It allows opening the file for reading. Read-write. It allows opening the file for reading and writing. Write. It allows opening the file for writing. Advanced file operations in VB.NET, Streamreader and Streamwriter classes. Binary reader and binary writer classes. The directory info class. The file info class. However, to utilize the immense powers of System.io classes, you need to know the commonly used properties and methods of these classes. The Streamreader class. The Streamreader class also inherits from the abstract base class TextReader that represents a reader for reading a series of characters. The following describes some of the commonly used methods of the Streamreader class. Public overrides subclose. It closes the Streamreader object and the underlying stream and releases any system resources associated with the reader. Public overrides function peek as integer returns the next available character but does not consume it. Public override function read as integer reads the next character from the input stream and advances the character position by one character. The following program demonstrates use of the Streamreader. The Streamwriter class. The Streamwriter class inherits from the abstract class TextWriter that represents a writer which can write a series of characters. Some of the most commonly used methods of Streamwriter class. Public overrides subclose closes the current Streamwriter object and the underlying stream. Public overrides subflush clears all buffers for the current writer and causes any buffer data to be written to the underlying stream. Public overridable subwrite value as Boolean writes the text representation of Boolean value to the text string or stream inherited from TextWriter. Public overrides subwrite value as char writes a character to the stream. Public overridable subwrite value as decimal writes the text representation of a decimal value to the text string or stream. The following program demonstrates use of the Streamwriter class. When the code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. The Binary Reader class. The Binary Reader class is used to read binary data from a file. A binary reader object is created by passing a file stream object to its constructor. Some of the commonly used methods of the binary reader class. Public overridable subclose. It closes the binary reader object and the underlying stream. Public overridable function read as integer reads the characters from the underlying stream and advances the current position of the stream. Public overridable function read Boolean as Boolean reads the Boolean value from the current stream and advances the current position of the stream by 1 byte. The binary writer class. The binary writer class is used to write binary data to a stream. A binary writer object is created by passing a file stream object to its constructor. Some of the commonly used methods of the binary writer class. Public overridable subclose. It closes the binary writer object and the underlying stream. Public overridable subflush clears all buffers for the current writer and causes any buffer data to be written to the underlying device. Public overridable function seek, open bracket, offset as integer, comma, origin as seek origin, close bracket, as long, sets the position within the current stream. Public overridable subwrite, value as Boolean, writes a 1 byte Boolean value to the current stream with 0 representing false and 1 representing true. Binary reader and binary writer classes. Example for binary reader and binary writer classes. When the above code is compiled and executed, it produces the following result. The directory info class. The directory info class is derived from the file system info class. It has various methods for creating, moving, and browsing through directories and subdirectories. This class cannot be inherited. Following are some commonly used properties of the directory info class. Attributes gets the attributes for the current file or directory. Creation time gets the creation time of the current file or directory. Exists gets a Boolean value indicating whether the directory exists. Extension gets a string representing the file extension. Full name gets the full path of the directory or file. Last access time gets the time the current file or directory was last accessed. Name gets the name of the directory info instance. The file info class. The file info class is derived from the file system info class. It has properties and instance methods for creating, copying, deleting, moving, and opening of files, and helps in the creation of file stream objects. This class cannot be inherited. Following are some commonly used properties of the file info class. Attributes gets the attributes for the current file. Creation time gets the creation time of the current file. Directory gets an instance of the directory which the file belongs to. Exists gets a Boolean value indicating whether the file exists. Extension gets a string representing the file extension. Full name gets the full path of the file. Last access time gets the time the current file was last accessed. Last write time gets the time of the last written activity of the file. Length gets the size in bytes of the current file. Name gets the name of the file. Directory info class and the file info class. Example for directory info class and the file info class. When you compile and run the program, it displays the names of files and their size in the Windows directory. Dialog box. There are many built-in dialog boxes to be used in Windows forms for various tasks, like opening and saving files, printing a page, providing choices for colors, fonts, page setup, etc. to the user of an application. These built-in dialog boxes reduce the developer's time and workload. All of these dialog box control classes inherit from the common dialog class and override the run dialog open close brackets function of the base class to create the specific dialog box. It all works like a normal Windows application. Common dialog boxes. There are two common dialog boxes. They are predefined standard dialog boxes for file opening and saving, font and color selection, printing and previewing, predefined standard dialog boxes for appears in the component tray. Commonly used dialog box controls: open file dialog, save file dialog, font dialog, color dialog, print dialog, print preview dialog. Displaying a Windows common dialog box. Use show dialog method to display the common dialog box at runtime. Show dialog only displays the dialog. It does not do anything else. Using the information from the dialog box. Code must be written to retrieve and use a choice made by the user in the common dialog box. Example: color dialog displayed. User selects color and clicks OK. The example is shown in the figure.code. Must be written to apply the selected color to the object. To write information in the dialog box, we must write a code. Explains the controls and the descriptions. The table explains the controls and the descriptions. Serial number, control and description. 1. Color dialog. It represents a common dialog box that displays available colors along with controls that enable the user to define custom colors. 2. Font Dialog. It prompts the user to choose a font from among those installed on the local computer and lets the user select the font size, and color. 3. Open File Dialog. It prompts the user to open a file and allows the user to select a file to open. 4. Save File Dialog. It prompts the user to select a location for saving a file and allows the user to specify the name of the file to save data. 5. Print Dialog. It lets the user to print documents by selecting a printer and choosing which sections of the document to print from a Windows Forms application. Setting initial values. Setting the initial values done before executing the dialog box. Font Dialog 1.font equals .subtotal label.font or Color Dialog 1.color equals .backcolor. This is a user-defined value. The picture shows sample of setting the initial values. Before executing the show dialog method, assign the existing values of the object's properties that will be altered. When the dialog box appears, the current values will be selected. If the user presses cancel, the property settings of the objects will remain unchanged. VB.NET Exception Handling. An exception is a problem that arises during the execution of a program. An exception is a response to an exceptional circumstance that arises while a program is running, such as an attempt to divide by 0. Exceptions provide a way to transfer control from one part of the program to another. VB.NET Exception Handling is built upon 4 keywords: try, catch, finally, and throw. Object Instance of Framework Class Library, FCL, supplied exception class or one of its subclasses. Used by VB.NET to notify you of errors, problems, other unusual conditions that may occur while your system is running. Causing an exception. Create deliberate error. Exception is thrown. Message dialog indicates that code did not deal with exception. Execution is interrupted. Error handling. Try. A try block identifies a block of code for which particular exceptions will be activated. It's followed by one or more catch blocks. Catch. A program catches an exception with an exception handler at the place in the program where you want to handle the problem. The catch keyword indicates the catching of an exception. Finally, the finally block is used to execute a given set of statements, whether an exception is thrown or not thrown. For example, if you open a file, it must be closed whether an exception is raised or not. Throw. A program throws an exception when a problem shows up. This is done using a throw keyword. Here's the definition for try, catch, finally, and throw statements. Every exception will execute at least 3 of the statements once the error occurs. Error handling. A try-catch block is placed around the code that might generate an exception. Code within a try-catch block is referred to as protected code, and the syntax for using try-catch looks like the following. Syntax. Raise an exception. A method catches an exception using a combination of the try and catch keywords. Exception classes in .NET Framework. In the .NET Framework, exceptions are represented by classes. The exception classes in the .NET Framework are mainly directly or indirectly derived from the System.Exception class. Some of the exception classes derived from the System.Exception class are the System.ApplicationException and system.systemException classes. The system.applicationException class supports exceptions generated by application programs, so the exceptions defined by the programmers should derive from this class. The system.systemException class is the base class for all predefined system exception. Handling exceptions. VB.NET provides a structured solution to the exception handling problems in the form of try and catch blocks. Using these blocks, the core program statements are separated from the error handling statements. These error handling blocks are implemented using the try, catch, and finally keywords. Creating user-defined exceptions. The following example demonstrates this. You can also define your own exception. User-defined exception classes are derived from the application exception class. Throwing objects. You can use a throw statement in the catch block to throw the present object as throw expression. You can throw an object if it is either directly or indirectly derived from the system.exception class. Exception class hierarchy. The diagram shows the class hierarchy of exception class. It is commonly divided into two types of exceptions: application exception, system exception. Menus. Creating context menus. Shortcut menus that pop up when you right-click are specific to the component to which user is pointing, reflecting options available for that component or situation. A context menu does not have a top-level menu. Application can have multiple context menus. Menus. Add context menu component to the form. Appears in the component tray. Click on the words Context Menu at the top of the form. The words Type Here appear. Click on the words Type Here and proceed as you did for the main menu. Menu. The picture will show you what is menu. Menu is used to do multiple operations at output stage. Menu bar contains menus which drop down to display a list of menu items. Each item has a name and text property. Each item has a click event. Add main menu control to form appears in the component tray below form, where non-display controls are shown. Words Type Here appear at the top of the form. Defining menus. To create the menu, simply type where the words Type Here appear at the top of the form. Include and symbol as you type to indicate keyboard access keys. You're actually entering the text property for a menu item object. Change menu item object names in the properties window and follow consistent naming conventions. Submenus. Pop up to the right of a menu item. Filled triangle to the right of the menu item indicates to the user the existence of a submenu. Create submenus by moving to the right of a menu item and typing the next item's text. Separator bars. Used for grouping menu items according to their purpose. Visually represented as a bar across a menu. Create using one of two methods: typing a single hyphen for the text. Right-click on Menu Designer where you want a separator bar and choose Insert Separator. Coding for menu items. Double-click any menu item to open the item's click event procedure. Write code for the click event procedure. Modifying menu items. Right-click the menu bar to delete, insert new, insert separator, edit names. Displays menu item name property rather than text property on form. Drag and drop menu items to new locations. Menu properties. Enabled property, true or false. Checked property, true or false, used to indicate the current state of menu item that can be turned on and off. Create keyboard shortcuts. In Properties window for menu item, select the Shortcut property. Make choice from drop-down list. Standards for Windows menus. Follow Windows standards for applications. Include keyboard access keys. Use standards for shortcut keys if used. Place File menu at left end of menu bar and end File menu with Exit. Help, if included, is placed at the right end of menu bar. Connecting to database. Database connection. Applications communicate with the database firstly to retrieve the data stored there and present it in a user-friendly way, and secondly to update the database by inserting, modifying, and deleting data. Microsoft ActiveX Data Objects.net ADO.net is a model, a part of the .NET framework that is used by the .NET applications for retrieving, accessing, and updating data. ADO.net Object Model. ADO.net Object Model is nothing but the structured process flow through various components. The data residing in a data store or database is retrieved through the data provider. Various components of the data provider retrieve data for the application and update data. An application accesses data either through a data set or a data reader. Data sets store data in a disconnected cache, and the application retrieves data from it. Data readers provide data to the application in a read-only and forward-only mode. Data provider. A data provider is used for connecting to a database, executing commands and retrieving data, storing it in a dataset, reading the retrieved data, and updating the database. The data provider in ADO.net consists of the following four objects: objects and description. Connection. This component is used to set up a connection with a data source. Command. A command is an SQL statement or a stored procedure used to retrieve, insert, delete, or modify data in a data source. Data reader. Data reader is used to retrieve data from a data source in a read-only and forward-only mode. Data adapter. This is integral to the working of ADO.net since data is transferred to and from a database through a data adapter. It retrieves data from a database into a data set and updates the database. When changes are made to the data set, the changes in the database are actually done by the data adapter. There are following different types of data providers included in ADO.net. The .NET Framework Data Provider for SQL Server provides access to Microsoft SQL Server. The .NET Framework Data Provider for OLEDB provides access to data sources exposed by using OLEDB. The .NET Framework Data Provider for ODBC provides access to data sources exposed by ODBC. The .NET Framework Data Provider for Oracle provides access to Oracle data source. The Entity Client Provider enables accessing data through Entity Data Model (EDM) applications. Dataset. A dataset is an in-memory representation of data. It is a disconnected cached set of records that are retrieved from a database. When a connection is established with a database, the data adapter creates a dataset and stores data in it. After the data is retrieved and stored in a dataset, the connection with the database is closed. This is called the disconnected architecture. The dataset works as a virtual database containing tables, rows, and columns. The dataset class. The dataset class is present in the system.data namespace. Data table collection. It contains all the tables retrieved from the data source. Data relation collection. It contains relationships and the links between tables in a data set. Extended properties. It contains additional information like the SQL statement for retrieving data, time of retrieval, etc. Data table. It represents a table in the data table collection of a data set. It consists of a data row and data column objects. The data table objects are case sensitive. Data relation. It represents a relationship in the data relationship collection of the data set. It is used to relate two data table objects to each other through data column objects. Dataset class. The dataset class is present in the system.data namespace. Data row collection. It contains all the rows in a data table. Data view. It represents a fixed customized view of a data table for sorting, filtering, searching, editing, and navigation. Primary key. It represents the column that uniquely identifies a row in a data table. Data row. It represents a row in the data table. The data row object and its properties and methods are used to retrieve, evaluate, insert, delete, and update values in the data table. The new row method is used to create a new row, and the add method adds a row to the table. Data column collection. It represents all the columns in a data table. Data column. It consists of the number of columns that comprise a data table. Connecting to a database. The .NET Framework provides two types of connection classes. SQL connection, designed for connecting to Microsoft SQL Server. OLEDB connection, designed for connecting to a wide range of databases like Microsoft Access and Oracle. Connecting to a database. We have a table stored in Microsoft SQL Server named Customers in a database named TestDB. Please consult SQL Server tutorial for creating databases and database tables in SQL Server. Let us connect to this database. Take the following steps. Select Tools, Connect to Database. Select the server name and the database name in the Add Connection dialog box. Click on the Test Connection button to check if the connection succeeded. Add a data grid view on the form. Click on the Choose Data Source combo box. Click on the Add Project Data Source link. This opens a data source configuration wizard. Select Database as the data source type. Choose Dataset as the database model. Choose a connection already set up. Save the connection string. Choose the database object, Customers table in our example, and click Finish. Select the Preview Data link to see the data in the results grid. When the application is run using Start button available at the Microsoft Visual Studio toolbar, it will show the following window. Access data in a data grid view. In this example, let us access data in a data grid view control using code. Take the following steps. Add a data grid view control and a button in the form. Change the text of the button control to fill. Double-click the button control to add the required code for the click event of the button as shown. When the above code is executed and run using Start button available at the Microsoft Visual Studio toolbar, it will show the following window. Clicking the Fill button displays the table on the data grid view control. Access data in a data grid view. So far we have used tables and databases already existing in our computer. In this example, we will create a table, add columns, rows, and data into it and display the table using a data grid view object. Take the following steps. Add a data grid view control and a button in the form. Change the text of the button control to fill. Add the following code in the code editor. When the above code is executed and run using Start button available at the Microsoft Visual Studio toolbar, it will show the following window. Clicking the Fill button displays a table on the data grid view control. Connecting to a database. VB.NET provides support for interoperability between the COM object model of Microsoft Excel 2010 and your application. To avail this interoperability in your application, you need to import the namespace microsoft.office.interop.excel in your Windows Form application. Creating an Excel application from VB.NET. Let's start with creating a Windows Forms application by following the following steps in Microsoft Visual Studio. File, New project, Windows Forms Applications. Finally, select OK. Microsoft Visual Studio creates your project and displays following Form 1. Insert a button control button 1 in the form. Add a reference to Microsoft Excel object library to your project. Connecting to a database. Select Add Reference from the project menu. On the COM tab, locate Microsoft Excel Object Library and then click Select. Click OK. Double-click the code window and populate the click event of button 1 as shown. When the code is executed and run using Start button available in the Microsoft Visual Studio toolbar, it will show the following window. Clicking on the button would display the following Excel sheet. You will be asked to save the workbook. Conclusion. In this chapter, the user would have learned about file and database applications and the following in detail. File access, dialog boxes, error handling, menus, connecting to databases.